It's the network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. It is Thursday, March 18th, 2021, and we are live. It's been a very, very busy day and getting ready to be on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday. I got contacted by a TV show on the Fox Soul digital streaming network, and they want me as a guest on their show next week. So you hear more about that. I had to film a TV show today. I was a guest on a TV show today. You'll find out more about that in the next few weeks. So it's been a very, very busy day. So we're here for the African History Network show. So on today's show, I'm going to get to a topic that I've touched on in the past few days, but haven't had a chance to really delve into like I wanted to. So we'll talk about the Elaine, Arkansas Race Riot of 1919, where African-American sharecroppers were killed for trying to unionize. And this is during the Red Summer of 1919. And when we talked about the African-American farmers and the farmers getting $5 billion allocated in the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, I played a segment from Cross Connection with Tiffany Cross on MSNBC. And she talked about the African-American farmers, but talked about the Elaine, Arkansas Race Riot in 1919. So we'll deal with that today. And also we'll talk some about the Red Summer of 1919 as well. Reverend Raphael Warnock of Georgia gave his first address on the U.S. Senate floor, and he did not disappoint. He championed federal voting rights laws, and he attacked the laws trying to be passed in the Georgia state legislature to restrict voting rights of not just African Americans, but other people as well, Hispanics, younger people, Asians, etc. So we'll talk some about that. He was on the Rachel Maddow show. Reverend Raphael Warnock in first floor speech champions federal voting laws to blunt Georgia's proposed restrictions. So, I've been talking about this each week now, and we've been dealing with this also on Roland Martin Unfiltered, the growing calls for to put economic pressure on corporations that are headquartered in Georgia, okay, whether you're talking about a Coca-Cola or a Home Depot, or a UPS, etc. So we know Black Voters Matter and the New Georgia Project, Stacey Abrams, etc. are leading that charge. And this is something that we definitely have to do. We have to leverage our economics to enforce our politics. We have to leverage our economics to enforce our politics. So we'll talk about that also. And then we'll give a brief update on what's going on in the investigation into the tragic killing of 8 people at 3 Atlanta area spas. But there's something deeper here. It's not just white domestic terrorism. There was an article from NBC News today that dealt with racism, sexism must be considered in Atlanta case involving killing of 6 Asian women, experts say. Racism, sexism must be considered in Atlanta case involving killing of 6 Asian women, experts say. And we're going to talk some about racism and stereotypes of Asian American women and African American women and hypersexualization, because this is tied together. It's not separate. It's tied together. Some people may want to dichotomize it, but it's hard to separate or dichotomize European white supremacy and racism. But these are related. Some of this some of the hypersexualization stereotypes of African American women are very similar to those of Asian American women. And it sets them up for violence. It sets them up for sexual violence. So we'll talk about that on today's show. Now, on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. We're going to do like some real segments on like relationships and love and sex and all that stuff. We're going to really, really talk about that. I'm going to bring Kenya K. Stevens. Well, I can't bring Kenya on FCC regulated radio because she don't know how to act. We're going to have to do another broadcast on what she used to do the Michael Basin show. But let me I got to prep Kenya. Kenya get me put off the radio. But even when she's trying to be good, she'll still say the wrong thing. So we got to do another show with Kenya. So we focus on educating, empowering, inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, the 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Sign up for our email newsletter as well. Okay. If you'd like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, or through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show to sign up for, to donate to the African, to support us through PayPal or Cash App. Okay. All right. So we're coming up here on a break. We're going to jump into this. Now, a lot of people, I got some feedback on the broadcast that I did on Wednesday dealing with St. Patrick's Day myths. Why do Black people celebrate? Do you know what you're celebrating? So a lot of people enjoyed that show and learned a lot. You can, all these shows are archived at our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network on Facebook, and also on YouTube at Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP on YouTube also. Okay. All right. So let's, I want to jump into this first topic. We're going to talk some about Reverend Raphael Warnock, and then we're going to deal with the attack on the day spas, but I want to deal with this from a different perspective. We're going to deal with racism and sexism. There was an article from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and get clip one ready, Shakita, because we're going to go to that after the break. There was an article from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Warnock in first floor speech champions federal voting laws to blunt Georgia's proposed restrictions. Okay. Now, we've been talking about this in Senate Bill 241 and House Bill 531 that are being pushed through the Georgia State Legislature to restrict access to the ballot box. But Georgia's Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock told his U.S. Senate colleagues Wednesday that the filibuster should not get in the way of passing a federal overhaul of elections, campaign finance, and redistricting laws. The filibuster should not get in the way of passing a federal overhaul of elections, campaign finance, and redistricting laws. Quote, I stand before you saying that this issue, access to voting and preempting politicians' efforts to restrict voting, is so fundamental to our democracy that it is too important to be held hostage by a Senate rule, especially one historically used to redistrict the expansion of basic rights. Now, it's important to understand dealing with the history of Georgia. Okay, the statewide runoff elections in Georgia, that law was created to lock African Americans out of widespread statewide power. Okay, that goes back to 1963 and State Representative Denmark Groover. There was a law in place before that to do the same thing, but that law was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court, so they came with another one. All right, so you have to understand this history of Georgia, a former Confederate state, a state that took up arms and separated from the Union to maintain slavery and maintain their way of life, and they want to keep African Americans locked out of political power in Georgia. All right, we're coming up on the break. We'll deal with this on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by, everybody. Stand by. All right, we'll be back in a few minutes. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcasting and social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. All right. Stand by, everybody. We'll be back from break in 4 minutes. Okay, stand by. Wow. How's everybody doing today? Man, it's been a very, very busy day. I should be on Roland Martin and Filter tomorrow on Friday. We'll discuss it on our Friday show. Why the hell won't this? All right, who do we have here? We've got stand by. We'll be back from break in 3 minutes. Okay, we've got John Ray. We've got okay, welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Thursday, March 18th, 2021. Be sure to go back and listen to the show I did dealing with the history of St. Patrick's Day. That blew a lot of people away. We dealt with a lot of history people did not know about and tied that into the history of the Moors, the African Moors in Europe also. All right, so let's continue here. Right before the break, we were talking about what's going on in Georgia and the fight to restrict voter access at the ballot box. Republicans are pushing through something like about 50 bills, trying to push through about 50 bills in the Georgia state legislature, 253 bills in 43 states to restrict voting access. There was an article from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution from March 17th, 2021. Warnock in first floor speech champions federal voting laws to blunt Georgia's proposed restrictions. This is Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock, new senator in Georgia, U.S. Senator from Georgia. And in his first floor speech on the U.S. Senate floor, he said, "I stand before you saying that this issue, access to voting and preempting politicians' efforts to restrict voting, is so fundamental to our democracy that it is too important to be held hostage by a Senate rule, especially one historically used to restrict the expansion of basic rights." Senator Warnock said during his first ever floor speech, "It is a contradiction to say we must protect minority rights in the Senate while refusing to protect minority rights in our society." All right, so he was a guest on the Rachel Maddow show from, it was Wednesday, March 17th. Reverend Raphael Warnock spoke with Rachel Maddow. The American people are being squeezed out of their own democracy. Let's go to this clip.
That's voting rights. It is urgent.
Back and started from the beginning.
Very foundation upon.
Tell me how you see that happening in practical terms. Obviously, you reckoned with that a little bit today in your speech, talking about the Senate filibuster rule and how this Senate procedure can't be used on the basis we can't restrict minority rights in society with a rule designed to protect minority rights in the Senate. How do you see it practically going? How do you imagine a victory here?
Well, listen, Rachel, I know that there's a big debate, obviously, going on about the filibuster, and we will have to confront that issue head on. But my argument today was this: voting rights is bigger than the filibuster issue. And whether we get rid of the filibuster or not, we have to pass voting rights. We have to give the people their own voice in their own democracy. And so we will see what path that takes. And it's interesting, folks ask, people like me, well, should you get rid of the filibuster or not? It seems to me that the onus really is on those in the chamber who have not yet decided to support voting rights, because they could vote it up. They could vote for it. And that's the case that I was trying to make, because I think really that what's at stake is the viability and the health and the credibility of our democracy. That sacred idea of one person, one vote, that's what's under assault in Georgia and some 43 other states. And as we stood up as Americans in the 1960s and passed federal legislation to say that we're one country and that this is the foundation upon which this country is built, we are a democratic republic. We have to do that right now. And there is a path to do it. And to do otherwise would be a terrible dereliction of our duty. If we don't protect our democracy in the United States Senate, for what is the body of the Senate for?
I don't know very much right now about what the working life of a U.S. Senator is like. I think it changes with every Senate a little bit. I think it has changed a lot with COVID. And I think things had to have changed a little bit after the trauma of what happened on January 6th. But are you in a position where you can talk one-on-one with your colleagues who may not be in the same place as you on this issue, where you can talk with Senator Manchin, for example, who's the only Democrat who's not signed on as a co-sponsor to the For the People Act? Or are you in a position to talk to any of your fellow Southern senators who are Republicans who may be willing to have a conversation with you as a fellow Southerner about this?
Sure, we're having conversations all the time. Let me be really clear. This is a moral moment. This is a defining moment in America. And this is a fight for the soul of our democracy. And all of us have a dog in that fight. if we find ourselves in a situation where politicians don't even have to have the majority to do whatever it is they want to do, then the future of all of our children is imperiled. And so we have to stand up in this moment. I believe that history will judge us based on what we do. The reason I'm able to sit here right now, in addition to the fights of the martyrs that I listed today, John Lewis, who stood up and risked his life, Medgar Evers, who lost his life, and so many others. Over the last 10 years in Georgia, we've been fighting for voting rights, and with a kind of laser-like focus. My own church has been a plaintiff suing the state of Georgia for its voter suppression tactics. And then the people of Georgia rose up in a historic way in November and January, and they sent the first African-American senator, the first Jewish senator to the United States Senate. And a couple of weeks ago, we passed COVID relief for Americans, checks in people's pockets, shots in their arm. Why were we able to do it? Because the will of the people could be successfully made manifest in the outcome of the vote. But what happens if increasingly there's a disconnect between who and what the people want and what happens in Washington? That's what's been going on. The American people are being crowded out and squeezed out of their own democracy, and I'm going to do everything in my power as a United States Senate to get the people their voice back.
Okay, so that was Reverend Raphael Warnock of Georgia, U.S. Senator from Georgia, who is a pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Georgia, the same church where Dr. King preached at. And he is talking about his first Senate floor speech that he gave on Wednesday. I think that was Wednesday he did that. So let me give you a little background information, and I'm going to let you hear some of that Senate floor speech that he gave. So a lot of people are asking the question, what is the filibuster? You're hearing more and more about the filibuster. And it's only applies to the U.S. Senate. Some people remember Frank Capra's 1939 movie, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, starring Jimmy Stewart. A lot of people remember Jimmy Stewart in, the movie from they show every Christmas. But to filibuster means to delay action on a bill or other issue by talking. Okay. And Strom Thurmond gave the longest filibuster. He did like 23 hours, and it was to block the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So the filibuster has its roots in amongst segregationists, okay, in the Senate. Doesn't apply to the House of Representatives, only applies to the U.S. Senate. The rules in the House are different than the rules in the Senate. The rules in the Senate are different than the rules of the House. Those are two different chambers of the legislative branch of the federal government. This is why we have to understand the rules of the House and the Senate to understand how to get bills passed in the House and the Senate. This is what I'm trying to explain to all the cut the check people who don't seem to understand that based upon Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 of the U.S. Constitution, the president can't do an executive order to pay out money, including reparations. It has to pass both the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate because Congress controls the power of the purse. It actually says that in the U.S. Constitution. But since many of our people, many of us don't read, we don't know this. But the filibuster means to delay action on the bill or other issue by talking. The Senate filibuster first captured the American imagination in Frank Capra's 1939 movie, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, starring Jimmy Stewart, who also was on the radio show Have Gun Will Travel. That's a whole nother conversation, but look that up, Have Gun Will Travel. And Jimmy Stewart's character spoke for more than a day before collapsing from exhaustion. And more recently, in 2013, when Texas State Senator Wendy Davis spoke for 13 hours to try to block a bill imposing new restrictions on abortion. So the popular image of a lone lawmaker mounting an impassioned hours-long argument belies the reality in today's U.S. Senate, where a mere threat is often enough to initiate a filibuster and hold up a bill. Under current U.S. Senate rules, a filibuster can only be stopped if 60 senators vote to end debate in a process called cloture. Okay, cloture. C-L-O-T-U-R-E, cloture. Under current U.S. Senate rules, a filibuster can only be stopped if 60 senators vote to end debate in a process called cloture. Okay, now why is the rule a problem for Democrats? With just 50 senators, including 2 independents who caucus with them, Senator Angus King of Maine and Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Bernie Sanders is an independent. Now, when he runs for president, he's a Democrat, and he goes back to being an independent. He's doing the political party hokey pokey, I guess, you know. So I said this back in 2016. I can't keep up with Bernie. Will you Democrat or Republican? You do Democrat or Independent today, Bernie? Let me know. I can't keep up with you. With just 50 senators, including 2 independents who caucus with them, Democrats will not be able to overcome filibusters on their bills unless at least 10 Republicans vote with them. That's not going to happen, most likely. 10 Republicans vote with them. You can get 10 Republicans to vote for the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that was going to greatly benefit white people that voted for these Republicans in the first place in their respective states. You can get 10 Republicans to vote for the American Rescue Plan to give $1,400 stimulus checks to their own constituents, and many of their constituents are some of the poorest people in the U.S. Alabama, Kentucky, South Carolina, things like that. You can even Mississippi. You can get 10 Republicans to vote for a bill to help their own people that voted for them. So you're not going to be able to get 10 Republicans. Not a single Republican in the House or the Senate voted for the American Rescue Plan. We just have to sit back and look at this. And then we see that 172 Republicans in the House of Representatives today voted against renewing the Violence Against Women Act. After 7 women were killed in the Atlanta area with the Atlanta spa killings. This is the white nationalist party, the QAnon party. The Republican Party. This is the white nationalist party. So let's continue here. So with just 50 senators, including 2 independents who caucus with them, Democrats will not be able to overcome filibusters on their bills unless at least 11 Republicans vote with them. And that's not going to happen. Republicans didn't even want to increase the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. And it would benefit a lot of the poor white people that vote for them to keep putting them in office. They didn't want to vote for that. But many Republicans are deeply skeptical of Democratic priorities and unlikely to help build supermajorities. Democrats were able to pass Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 stimulus plan without a supermajority through another Senate maneuver called the budget reconciliation process, which requires only a simple majority for a measure to pass. And they're going to also use the budget reconciliation process to get the $1 trillion plus transportation bill passed also. One Republican was absent that day, which helped the Democrats. But they also have the fallback of a tiebreaking 51st vote for Madam Vice President, MVP Kamala Harris, who presides over. Hold on, just a second. Just a second here. Let me stop this from playing. Who presides over the U.S. Senate. So the vice president, based upon the U.S. Constitution, the vice president presides over the U.S. Senate. Okay. But the rules limit the use of the reconciliation process. Senate Republicans like low-down Moscow Mitch McConnell, Moscow Mitch, said Democrats should work to produce bipartisan legislation instead of trying to end or change filibuster. The hell with Mitch. Because when Republicans are in power, they do whatever they want to do. So trying to take advice from Mitch about what Democrats do. When Republicans in power, they do whatever they want to do and they don't listen. McConnell has warned of dire consequences if Democrats rip up the rule, saying Republicans will use other parliamentary maneuvers to stall work in the chamber. You're going to do that anyway, because that's what you people do. That's what Republicans do. And McConnell is saying Democrats are going to have hell to pay when Republicans get back in the majority. You gonna screw us over when you get back in the majority, regardless of how nice we are. So you have to wield power while you have it, period. They screwed us over when all you got to do is look at the fact that they ran through Amy Coney Barrett to get her confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court to help Donald Trump, because Donald Trump wanted to push her through because he was afraid that the results of the 2020 presidential election would end up in the U.S. Supreme Court. They rammed her through in about 8 days, and then the day after they got her confirmed, what did Mitch McConnell do? He let the Senate go on recess, and the Senate had not passed another coronavirus relief bill. They rammed through Amy Coney Barrett. So regardless of how nice Democrats are to Republicans, we still gonna get screwed by Republicans, period, regardless of what happens. So you have to wield power while you have it. All right, so I want to go to this clip here from Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Here's an excerpt of Reverend Raphael Warnock on the U.S. Senate floor, letting them have it. Let's go to this clip, Shakita.
Senator from Georgia. Mr. President, before I begin my formal remarks, I want to and violence that took 8 precious lives last night in metropolitan Atlanta. I agree with Georgians, with Americans, with people of love all across the world. This unspeakable violence visited largely upon the Asian community is one that causes all of us to recommit ourselves to the way of peace, an act of peace that prevents these kinds of tragedies from happening in the first place. We pray for these families. Mr. President, I rise here today as a proud American and as one of the newest members of the Senate in all of the journey that has brought me to these hallowed halls, and with an abiding sense of reverence and gratitude for the faith and sacrifices of ancestors who paved the way. I am a proud son of the great state of Georgia, born and raised in Savannah, a coastal city known for its cobblestone streets and verdant town squares, towering oak trees, centuries old and covered in gray Spanish moss, stretched from one side of the street to the other, bend and beckon the lover of history and horticulture to this city by the sea. I was educated at Morehouse College, and I still serve in the pulpit of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, both in Atlanta, the cradle of the civil rights movement. And so, like those oak trees in Savannah, my roots go down deep, and they stretch wide. Soil of Waycross, Georgia, and Burke County, and Scriven County. In the word, I am Georgia, a living example and embodiment of its history and its hope, of its pain and promise, the brutality and possibility. Mr. President, at the time of my birth, Georgia's 2 senators were Richard B. Russell and Herman E. Talmadge, both arch segregationists and unabashed adversaries of the civil rights movement. After the Supreme Court's landmark Brown versus Board ruling outlawing school segregation, Talmadge warned that blood will run in the streets of Atlanta. Senator Talmadge's father, Eugene Talmadge, former governor of our state, had famously declared, "The South loves the Negro in his place, but his place is at the back door." When once asked how he and his supporters might keep black people away from the polls, he picked up a scrap of paper and wrote a single word on it: pistols. Yet there is something in the American covenant, its charter documents, and its Jeffersonian ideals that bends toward freedom. And led by a preacher and a patriot named King, Americans of all races stood up. History vindicated the movement that sought to bring us closer to our ideals, to lengthen and strengthen the cords of our democracy. And I now hold the seat, the Senate seat, where Herman E. Talmadge sat. That's why I love America. I love America because we always have a path to make it better, build a more perfect union. It is a place where a kid like me who grew up in public housing, first college graduate in my family, can now stand as a United States Senator. I had an older father. He was born in 1917. Serving in the Army during World War II, he was once asked to give up his seat to a young teenager while wearing his soldier's uniform. He said, making the world safe for democracy. But he was never bitter. Faith in God and in his family and in the American promise, and he passed that faith on to his children. My mother grew up in Waycross, Georgia. You know where that is? It's Waycross, Georgia. And like a lot of black teenagers in the 1950s, she spent her summers picking somebody else's tobacco and somebody else's cotton. But because this is America, the 82-year-old hands that used to pick somebody else's cotton went to the polls in January and picked her youngest son to be a United States Senator. Ours is a land where possibility is born of democracy, a vote, a voice, a chance to help determine the direction of the country and one's own destiny within it, possibility born of democracy. That's why this past November and January, my mom and other citizens of Georgia grabbed hold of that possibility and turned out in record numbers, 5 million in November, 4.4 million in January, far more than ever in our state's history. Turnout for a typical runoff doubled. And the people of Georgia sent their first African-American senator and first Jewish senator, my brother John Marshall, to these hallowed halls. But then what happened? Some politicians did not approve of the choice made by the majority of voters in a hard-fought election in which each side got the chance to make its case to the voters. And rather than adjusting their agenda, rather than changing their message, they're busy trying to change the rules. Mm-hmm. We are witnessing right now a massive and unabashed assault on voting rights, unlike anything we've ever seen since the Jim Crow era. This is Jim Crow in new clothes. Since the January election, some 250 voter suppression bills have been introduced by state legislatures all across the country, from Georgia to Arizona, from New Hampshire to Florida, using the big lie of voter fraud as a pretext for voter suppression. The same big lie that led to a violent insurrection on this very Capitol the day after my election. Within 24 hours, we elected Georgia's first African-American Jewish senator, and hours later, the Capitol was assaulted. We see in just a few precious hours the tension very much alive in the soul of America. And the question before all of us at every moment is, what will we do to push us in the right direction? And so politicians driven by that big lie aim to severely limit and in some cases eliminate automatic and same-day voter registration, mail-in and absentee voting, and early voting and weekend voting. They want to make it easier to purge voters from the voting roll altogether. As a voting rights activist, I've seen up close just how draconian these measures can be. I hail from a state that purged 200,000 voters from the roll one Saturday night in the middle of the night. We know what's happening here. Some people don't want some people to vote. I was honored on a few occasions to stand with our hero and my parishioner, John Lewis. I was his pastor, but I'm clear he was my mentor. On more than one occasion, we boarded buses together after Sunday church services as part of our Souls to the Polls program, encouraging the Ebenezer Church family and communities of faith to participate in the democratic process. Now, just a few months after Congressman Lewis's death, there are those in the Georgia legislature, some who even dared to praise his name, that are now trying to get rid of Sunday Souls to the Polls, making it a crime for people who pray together to get on a bus together in order to vote together. I think that's wrong. Matter of fact, I think that a vote is a kind of prayer, the kind of world we desire for ourselves and for our children.
Okay, pause it right there. Pause it right there, Shakita. Okay, pause it right there, Shakita. Okay, we'll play some more of that on tomorrow's show. Read the article from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Warnock in first floor speech champions federal voting laws to blunt Georgia's proposed restrictions. Okay, and that video is in that speech. That video is in that article as well. You can watch that. We're going to share some more of that on our show tomorrow. All right. Now, let's see here. I want to switch gears quickly. I want to deal with this topic quickly here, and then we'll get to the Elaine, Arkansas race riot of 1919. So there was a article dealing with the killing of 8 people in the Atlanta area at the day spas, allegedly by Robert Aaron Long. He admits to doing it. There's an article entitled "Racism, Sexism Must Be Considered in Atlanta Case Involving Killing of 6 Asian Women." Experts say racism, sexism must be considered in Atlanta case involving killing of 6 Asian women. Now, I found this article interesting in this reporting because this ties into a hypersexualization of Asian American women, but that is also connected to a hypersexualization of African American women. And I talked about this Monday when I dealt with Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion performing WAP at the Grammys. All of this is connected, and we're dealing with a system of white supremacy and racism. So very quickly, if we look at, and I have it pulled up here, if we look at this article, there's a couple portions I want to zone in on. It says, while police said the suspect denied having racial motivations, experts and activists alike say it's nearly impossible to divorce race from the discourse, given the historical fetishization of Asian women. Okay, there's a fetish that some people, especially white men, have of Asian American women, but they also have a fetish oftentimes of African American women as well. So there's a couple things I want to hone in on. Then we're going to tie this into hypersexualization when it comes to African American women and the Jezebel stereotype. So there's one portion of the article where it says killing Asian American women to eliminate a man's temptation speaks to the history of the objectification of Asian and Asian American women as variations of the Asian temptress, the dragon ladies, and the lotus blossoms, whose value is only in relation to men's fantasies and desires, whose value is only in relation to men's fantasies and desires. This is horrifying, okay? Okay, and this is said by Catherine Saniza Choi, an ethnic studies professor at the University of California, Berkeley. All right, now, if we look at, it's something I found very interesting here in this article. And I've read other articles dealing with Asian American history, things like this, and the history of Asians in this country. There's one part in here where it says, let me scroll down to it. Okay. Asian American women, our experiences are very particular because of our race and gender. White women don't understand why my experience of sexism and sexual harassment is different than their experience of sexual harassment. Then it goes on to say, killing Asian American women to eliminate a man's temptation speaks to the history of the objectification of Asian American women. Okay. And they talk about the temptress, the dragon ladies, lotus blossoms, etc. These sexual stereotypes that we've been taught of Asian American women, they're more docile, they're more obedient, etc. Right? Then it goes, and then we scroll down and look at this here. Okay. Popular culture continued to confirm many dehumanizing perceptions of Asian women. Stanley Kubrick's 1987 film Full Metal Jacket perpetuates the stereotype of women as sexual deviants, Asian women as sexual deviants, with a scene featuring a Vietnamese sex worker exclaiming, "Me so horny." And jokes like "Me love you long time" persist to this day, giving the impression that Asian women are, quote, just good for those certain things, end quote. Okay, we're out of time here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. Stay tuned for Democracy Now! Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, watching me on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to keep broadcasting for a few more minutes. We'll be back tomorrow night. Right now, it's Chris. Wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace. All right, stand by, everybody. Stand by. Where is, just a second here. Let me disconnect this call. All right, let's continue here. How's everybody doing? Okay. All right, everybody, share this broadcasting and social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. We'll be here for a few more minutes. Okay, so it goes and it ties this into stereotypes of Asian American women. And it ties it to the 1987 film Full Metal Jacket that I've seen. I've seen that film a few times. I remember that scene, "Me so horny." But then that's a song from the Two Live Crew. The Two Live Crew, they sample that saying from Stanley Kubrick's film, but it's a stereotype of African American, it's a stereotype of Asian American women, but then it becomes associated with African American women because in this song also you deal with the objectification and hypersexualization of African American women as well. Me so horny. Maybe because we know this history, it is hard to connect it to those other patterns, which is the United States fighting these terrible wars in the Asia Pacific and really treating Asian lives as if they're completely disposable. So this was one of the criticisms about the U.S. Fighting in Vietnam. Okay. Maybe because we know this history, it's hard not to connect it to this other pattern, which is the United States fighting these terrible wars in the Asia Pacific and really treating Asian lives as if they're completely disposable. Wu said this, saying the gunmen in Georgia, quote, considered these women, these people's lives disposable, end quote. Okay, so read the rest of this article. So I was doing research, preparing for an interview today. And I was looking at stereotypes. Okay, I was looking at dealing with stereotypes of African Americans and tying all this together. And there's some information that I was revisiting that I've looked at before. And this deals with stereotypes of African Americans. And I was also watching Dr. David Pilgrim of the Jim Crow Museum at Ferris State University. I was watching an episode of the Tammy Mack late night show on Fox Soul. And they contacted me today. They want me on their show next week. So I was watching a couple of episodes of it, and I saw Dr. David Pilgrim on. But early in the day, I was doing research for a TV interview that I did earlier today that was recorded. It's going to air sometime in March. Wake Up with Steve Hood. Steve Hood interviewed me today, so that episode is going to air March 18th. Airs, I think it's Channel 50 here in Detroit. So I'll give you more information about that. But I went to my archives and I was looking at some information on stereotypes of African Americans. And there's a this is from Wikipedia. It has some, I don't use Wikipedia a lot, but it has some good things, and you can search the sources as well. But this ties into the Jezebel stereotype. And the Jezebel stereotype is something that they added because a few years ago when I printed this up, they didn't have the Jezebel stereotype. So they've added this in. The Jezebel, which is a stereotype of a sexually voracious, promiscuous Black woman, was the counter image of the demure Victorian lady in every way. The idea stemmed from Europeans. Let's see here. The idea stemmed from Europeans' first encounter with semi-nude women in tropical Africa. The African practice of polygamy was attributed to uncontrolled lust, and tribal dances were construed as pagan orgies in contrast to European Christian chastity. Now, polygamy in Africa, that was not about uncontrolled lust. That is Europeans not understanding African culture and African practices and misinterpreting that. And usually when they misinterpret it, it's something negative. Okay, but polygamy was not about uncontrolled lust and things like this. This is Europeans trying to understand African culture and African practices, and they really did not have a foundation to be able to do that. The supposed indiscriminate sexual appetite of Black women slaves justified their enslavers' efforts to breed them with other slaves. It also justified rape by white men, even as a legal defense. Black women could not be rape victims because they always desired sex. This whole hypersexualization of African American women goes back hundreds of years. Okay. During and after Reconstruction, Black women had little recourse when raped by white men, and many Black women were reluctant to report their sexual victimization by Black men for fear that the Black men would be lynched. The Jezebel stereotype contrasts with the Mammy stereotype, providing two broad categories for pigeonholing by whites. Okay, so research this some more. Dealing with the Jezebel stereotype, and this ties into this whole hypersexualization, etc. Okay, now it caused me to think about something in tying into Nicki Minaj and Cardi B and all this stuff. Let me pull this up here. I thought this was showing this. Hold on. They go through and break down the stereotypes, the angry Black woman stereotype and everything, Sapphire. Where is it? Hold on. Okay, the Jezebel stereotype. Okay, yeah, the Jezebel stereotype, a stereotype of a sexually voracious, promiscuous woman, was the counter image of the demure Victorian lady in every way. All right. So read this. Now, so in looking at all this caused me to remember something, a story that I covered a few years ago. There was a wax statue of Nicki Minaj at the Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. And the wax statue, it was a statue of her from the pose from her video Anaconda. Okay. And a lot of people remember Anaconda. Her video Anaconda sampled Sir Mix-a-Lot. My Anaconda don't want none unless you got buns, hon. But I want to show you this picture because I saw this and it infuriated me. This is an article from theroot.com. There are other outlets had articles about this as well. So you can research this. So now Nicki Minaj approved of the depiction of her bent over. I have a problem with that. I have a real problem that this sister approved of this, but she did. But what happened was, this is the wax figure Nicki Minaj. This is taking a pose from her video Anaconda. What happened was that you had people visiting the museum that were humping and violating the wax statue of Nicki Minaj. Black people doing this. Like this sister here that has dollar bills acting like she's at a strip club, dehumanizing the image of a Black woman. Read this article. Nicki Minaj wax figure reduces famous rapper to famous rump. But see, what's problematic is that Nicki Minaj approved of the statue and the pose. This article is from August 20th, 2015. I dealt with all this when this came out. I'm like, what the hell is this? Nobody around her said, sister, you don't want to do that. You don't want to ruin your legacy. You need to think beyond right now. So there was pictures of people humping. I'm not sure if they have it in this article. There are other pictures I've seen because I have some. I put this into a presentation. There are pictures of men humping the wax statue of Nicki Minaj. It got so bad that the museum had to put security guards around the damn statue because people were humping it and violating the statue. If they'll violate the statue of Nicki Minaj, who's a multimillionaire, woman of African descent from Trinidad, do you think that it would be in their mind that it's all right to violate the bodies of Black women, especially those who may be poor, who may not have the resources of a Nicki Minaj to fight back and hire attorneys and things like that? Do you think it may be in their mind that it's all right to violate and dehumanize Black women? So this is a visitor. Let's look at this. A visitor to Madame Tussauds Wax Museum in Las Vegas throws dollars at a wax figure of Nicki Minaj. Museum patrons have been taking lewd photos with the figure and posting them to social media since the figure's unveiling. It got so bad they had to hire security guards to put around her. The wax stand, they had to hire security guards to put around her. Where you think they got an idea that something like that was okay, was permissible? Now, let me ask you a question. If it was a statue of Michelle Obama, now Michelle Obama wouldn't be bent over like that. It'd be a statue of Michelle Obama with a suit on or a nice dress or something like that. You think they would do that to a statue of Michelle Obama? I don't think so, because that's not the way Michelle Obama carries herself or presents herself. Now, I know that may not be Nicki Minaj off camera at home with her husband. That's the facade. That's the image projected of her. This is not an attack on Nicki Minaj. This is an observation. I'm connecting the dots. So there were some other pictures. Let's see if we can pull these up here. Let's see here. Okay, well, let's just look at this. Because I've dealt with this before. This is one genius. I'm a little hesitant to show this, but well, damn, he had somebody take the picture himself. But maybe you should see this, because if we're not going to protect our daughters and our women, goddamn it, nobody's going to do it. Not this one here. It's another one. Hold on. Let me see. Does it show his name here? Maybe I shouldn't show his name, but oh well. What the hell? You put it out there. This is at the same wax museum. This is what people were doing to the statue of Nicki Minaj. I'm not making this. This person is grabbing her hair and humping her like he's hitting it from the back. And you got people sitting up here justifying this bullshit that happened on the Grammys. And you're not connecting the dots. You don't understand the system of white supremacy and how it degrades African bodies. Go look. All you got to do is Google this. Because I've gone and researched all this. I reported back on this in 2015 when it was happening. And I'm like, what the hell are these people doing? It's a bunch of pictures. Hold on. It's a bunch of pictures that people took of themselves molesting the statue of Nicki Minaj. So the question you have to ask yourself is, why do they think that was permissible? Hold on. So the question you have to ask yourself is, why did they think that was permissible? It wasn't a sign that said you can hunt Nicki Minaj. There wasn't a sign there that said that. Did they do that to the other statues? I don't think so. So what made them think it was permissible to do it to her? It's because of the image that has been projected of Nicki Minaj, whether it's actually an accurate depiction of her or not. When you project yourself in a certain way, people are going to treat you accordingly. Read this article here. Nicki Minaj wax statue, indecent pictures. Matter Tussauds explains singer's sexual pose. See, when I was going back through reading over this stuff all over again, I still can't understand, sister, why the hell would you approve of a pose like that for a statue of you? That doesn't make sense. So then you got other pictures that people took of them taking pictures with the statue of Nicki Minaj, molesting her and defiling her and things like this. Let's look at this article here. This is from mentalunrest.com. Now, if they think it's all right to do this to a statue of a black woman, do you think some of them think it's all right to actually do this to a black woman? Public won't stop having sex with Nicki Minaj wax figure. While members of the general public continue to pretend having sex with entertainer Nicki Minaj's wax statue at Madame Tussauds Museum, thus validating the warnings of Azalea Banks, the museum announced that it would provide extra security for its apparent ode to Venus Hottentot. Okay, this is from August 23rd, 2015. They were disrespecting the statue museum, the wax statue so badly that the Madame Tussauds Museum had to hire extra security around the damn wax statue of a black woman because people wanted to hump it and molest it. See, this is what I'm trying to explain to people. These are not just songs. These are not just music videos. This is programming. You don't understand the warfare that's being waged against us. Okay, the way people treat you is based upon what people, the way people treat you is based upon how people think about you. How people think about you is based upon what they've been taught about you, what they've read, seen, and heard about you. Imagery, movies, songs, magazines, TV shows. It forms a consensus. Do you think they would treat Michelle Obama like that? So we have to understand the connection between the imagery that's projected of us and how people treat us. It's connected. So there was especially certain people that are projected in a hypersexualized manner, like a Megan Thee Stallion, a Nicki Minaj, a Cardi B. What happens when people transfer the hypersexuality of these stars that have security around them to black girls that don't have security around them and want to treat them accordingly? So there was, let's look at this one here. Is it in here? Oh, yeah. It's in this one also. Because they show white people and African Americans doing this to the statue. But both are bad. But to see black people do this, I'm just like, what are we doing to ourselves? This here, grabbing the behind. They did this at the Wax Museum. So go look at the rest of this. But it's a bunch of pictures. Just Google Nicki Minaj wax statue. I covered all this when it took place back in 2015. I was sitting there just thoroughly disgusted, outdone. I'm like, what the? A mind is a terrible thing to waste. You can just go through and look at this stuff here. But this is the image projected in the music video Anaconda. And whatever's disseminated is imitated, so people then treat you accordingly. Okay. Elaine, Arkansas Race Riot in 1919. Let's look at this quick. We'll talk about this some more tomorrow because I'm not really in the right frame of mind to deal with this right now. So on the cross connection with Tiffany Cross from March 13th, 2021. Tiffany Cross on MSNBC talked about the $5 billion that African American farmers are getting in the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, and how that's tied to almost a century of racism and discrimination against African American farmers from the federal government, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Farmers Home Administration, different things like that. And she mentioned she tied it into the Elaine, Arkansas Race Riot in 1919. We're going to revisit that clip. We'll deal with a little bit of this here, and then we'll talk about this some more on either Friday or Sunday when I have 2 hours on our Sunday show, because I'm not really in the right frame of mind to deal with this right now.
Okay, so Ron Johnson isn't the only person talking crazy this week. This week, your boy, Senator Lindsey Graham, a habitual line crosser and Donald Trump's Theon Greyjoy, yet again stepped out of pocket. I'll tell you how in a minute, but before I get into that, travel back in time with me to Elaine, Arkansas, during the bloody summer of 1919. In this small town on the Mississippi River, Black sharecroppers were being shaken down by white landowners. Each season, the landowners would demand obscene percentages of the profits, and they would never present the sharecroppers detailed accounting and would trap them with alleged cooked-up debts. So the Black folks knew joining a union would be their only way to survive it. It was the evening of September 30th when the sharecroppers and their families gathered in Hoops Bowl Church to discuss joining the Progressive Farmers and Household Union. They also aimed to buy the land they worked and had planned to hire a white lawyer to represent them with the landlords. But news of their plans leaked. At around 11 p.m., a group of local white men, some of whom were likely affiliated with law enforcement, fired shots into the church. With their wives and children inside, Black men like these, later dubbed the Elaine 12, were not just going to lay down and die. They returned fire, and a white man was killed. So then rumors that an organized insurrection against white residents rapidly spread across town. The governor at the time called for 500 soldiers to round up the heavily armed Negroes, he called them. The troops, along with white vigilantes, were under orders to shoot and kill any Negro who refused to surrender immediately. But obviously, no one was ever given an opportunity to surrender, which, let's keep it real, would of course meant death anyway. So for 5 days, they embarked on a killing spree, hunting Black people within a 200-mile radius. By the time the chaos ended, the white mob had murdered more than 200 African Americans indiscriminately. Men, women, and children were all slaughtered. Not one white person was ever held accountable for any of those deaths. Today, Elaine is a majority Black town where many of the residents live below the poverty line. So you can imagine how infuriating it might be to hear Lindsey Graham say this about a small portion of the COVID relief bill that provides a $5 billion fund for disadvantaged farmers, about a quarter of whom happen to be Black.
Let me give you an example of something that really bothers me. In this bill, if you're a farmer, your loan will be forgiven up to 120% of your loan, not 100%, but 120% of your loan if you're socially disadvantaged, if you're African American, some other minority. But if you're a white person, if you're a white woman, no forgiveness. That's reparations. What does that got to do with COVID?
This debt relief will begin to rectify decades of broken promises and discrimination from the USDA that caused Black farmers to lose roughly 90% of their land between 1910 and today. So call it whatever you like, Lindsey. Not everyone is designed to keep eating fertilizer from the people who so publicly disrespect them. We leave that to you. But just so you know, this money falls way short of reparations, because Black farmers damn sure deserve better, way better than what this country has given them.
All right. Great job, Tiffany Cross. That's from MSNBC Cross Connection. Her show comes on Saturdays, 10 p.m. to 12 noon. So she's in Joanne Reed's old time slot for the read for AM Joy. Okay. Joanne Reed did Saturday and Sunday. So Tiffany Cross has Saturday. So here's the link to that clip. You can watch that. She breaks down some history. I really liked how she tied the Elaine, Arkansas race riot in 1919, because a lot of people don't know about that. I've read some articles about it, but a lot of people really don't know about that one. I like how she tied that into the African American farmers being discriminated against and the racism against them, and the $5 billion that they're getting in the 1.9 trillion American rescue plan. Okay, so very quickly here, let's look at this. Let's look at some history. Now, this is an article from blackpass.org, blackpass.org, okay? The Elaine, Arkansas riot of 1919. We may talk about this some more on our Sunday show. African Americans indicted for participating in the Elaine, Arkansas riot. Here's, I think about 12 of them. Yeah, 12 of them. Also, if you like this type of information, you want to support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. I forgot to say at the beginning of the show, you can still register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. It's an 8-week, 16-hour online course that I teach. We meet on Tuesdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I forgot to say this at the beginning of the show. And we do the class live. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. We deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. You can watch from around the world. It's on sale, $80, regular $130. As soon as you register, you can watch the class from this week. And then a couple of weeks ago, my guest speaker was Dr. David M. Hotep, author of the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. We have a really good class with him. So I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips, everything. So you're going to learn a lot in the class. We deal with thousands of years of history. So we posted the link here. It's also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, right on the homepage. Okay, so you can check it out there. All right, let's look at this history, then I really have to get out of here. One of the last of the major riots of the race riots of the Red Summer 1919, the so-called Race Riot in Elaine, Arkansas, was in fact a racial massacre. Though exact numbers are unknown, it is estimated that over 200 African Americans were killed, along with 5 whites, during the white hysteria of a pending insurrection of Black sharecroppers. Okay, the white hysteria of a pending insurrection of Black sharecroppers. The violence, terror, and concerted effort to drive African Americans out of Phillips County, Arkansas, was so jarring that Ida B. Wells, a founder of the NAACP, published a short book on the riot in 1920. It was also widely reported in African American newspapers like the Chicago Defender and generated several public campaigns to address the fallout. So on the night of September 30th, 1919, approximately 100 African Americans, mostly sharecroppers, on the plantations of white landowners, attending a meeting of the Progressive Farmers and Household Union, the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America, at a church in Hoop Spur, a small community in Phillips County, Arkansas. They hope to organize to obtain better payments for their cotton crops. Aware of white fears of communist influence on blacks, aware of white fears of communist influence on African Americans, the Union posted armed guards around the church to prevent disruption and infiltration. Okay, because there's a history, and you've heard me talk about this before. There's a history of African Americans in armed resistance. Okay, there's a history of African Americans in armed resistance, especially in the South. This is why this is why the book from Professor Charles E. Cobb Jr. is so important. This nonviolent stuff will get you killed, how guns made the civil rights movement possible. This nonviolent stuff will get you killed, how guns made the civil rights movement possible. If it had not been for Negroes with guns, there would not have been a modern day civil rights movement or any civil rights movement if it had not been for Negroes with guns. So we see here that there's armed resistance. They're protecting themselves. Okay, let's continue. So, aware of fears of communist influence on African Americans, the Union posted, the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America posted armed guards around the church to prevent disruption and infiltration. During the meeting, 3 white men pulled up to the church, to the front of the church. One of the men asked the guards, racial epithet, okay, going hunting, boys. Gunfire erupted after the guards made no response. Though sharp debate exists as to who fired first, the guards killed W.A. Atkins, Adkins, a security officer from Missouri Pacific Railroad, and injured Charles Pratt, the deputy sheriff. The next morning, an all-white posse went to arrest the suspects. Though they encountered little opposition from the black community, the fact that blacks outnumbered whites 10-1 in this area of Arkansas resulted in great fear of an insurrection. Okay. It resulted because white people were outnumbered 10-1 in this area of Arkansas. It resulted in the great fear of an insurrection. The concerned whites formed a mob numbering up to 1,000 armed men, many of whom came from the surrounding counties and as far away as Mississippi and Tennessee. Upon reaching Elaine, Arkansas, the mob began killing African Americans and ransacking their homes. As word of the attack spread throughout the African American community, some Black residents fled, while others armed themselves in defense. The mob then turned its attention to disarming those Blacks who fought back. Meanwhile, local white newspapers further inflamed tensions by reporting that there were planned Black uprisings. By October 2nd, U.S. Army troops arrived in Elaine, Arkansas, and the white mobs began to disperse. Because when the U.S. Army troops come in, the white mobs don't want to tangle with the troops, so they usually fall back. The same thing happened in Black Wall Street when the military troops came in. The white people that were attacking Black Wall Street fell back. So by October 2nd, U.S. Army troops arrived in Elaine, Arkansas, and the white mobs began to disperse. Federal troops rounded up and placed several hundred Blacks in temporary stockades where there were reports of torture. The men were not released until their white employers vouched for them. There was also considerable evidence that many of the soldiers sent to quell the violence engaged in the systematic killing of Black residents. In the end, 122 African Americans, but no whites, were charged by the Phillips County grand jury for crimes related to the riots. Okay, 122 African Americans were charged, but no white people were charged by the Phillips County grand jury for crimes related to the riots. Their court-appointed lawyers did little in their defense despite the investigation and involvement of the NAACP, because the NAACP would investigate race riots and different things like this and try to get some type of justice for our people. The first 12 men tried for first-degree murder were convicted and sentenced to death. As a result, 65 others entered plea bargains and accepted up to 21 years for second-degree murder. Led by Black attorney Scipio Africanus Jones, the NAACP and other civil rights groups worked towards retrials and release of the Elaine 12. Eventually, they won their release, with the last of the 12 set free on January 14th, 1925. So you can read about this. There are a number of articles written about the Elaine, Arkansas Race Riot 1919. This is from blackpast.org, blackpast.org, P-A-S-T. There's also one from, which one is this one here? Oh, SmithsonianMag.com. This is a really good one from SmithsonianMag.com. We may talk about this one Sunday from SmithsonianMag.com. This is the official website of the Smithsonian Institute. The massacre of Black sharecroppers that led the Supreme Court to curb the racial disparities of the justice system. White Arkansans fearful of what would happen if African Americans organized, took violent action, but it was the victims who ended up standing trial. Okay, this article is from August 2nd, 2018. And this is the Elaine 12. Elaine defendants, Helena Phillips County. I think they have the wrong date there, because this is in 1919. It says 1910. It should say 1919 probably. But check out this article: the massacre of Black sharecroppers that led the Supreme Court to curb the racial disparities of the justice system. All right, that's going to do it for us. If you want to support the African History Network, you can do so through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App. If you do it through Cash App, be sure to type in $ the AHN show, SHOW, $ the AHN show and it'll say Michael and have my picture there. Okay, because somebody set up a fake African History Network Cash App account that's not mine. Theirs is the AHN. I'm trying to rectify that. Or through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. That helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting. We're here 6 days a week, Monday through Friday. Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time, and Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The African History Network show. I'll be on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday. So we'll talk some about that on Friday's show. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behaviors, not over till we win, Wakanda forever. Okay, and all right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We got John Ray. Visit his website, workingwithjohnray.com, workingwithjohnray.com. We've got Miss Respect, Barnetta. Follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. My YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. Turn on live notifications so you know when we go live. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. Right now, it's corrects wrong behaviors, not over till we win, Wakanda forever. Peace. Thanks for tuning in.